Daniel Mercer pressed his forehead against the cold airplane window, watching the Atlantic clouds ripple beneath him like a shifting promise. At 49, he felt the weight of a life lived in half-shadows, divorce papers, birthday dinners eaten alone, and quiet nights scrolling through messages that felt warmer than anything his real world ever offered. Now, for the first time in years, he was traveling not for work, not for duty, but for hope. Hope wrapped in the voice of a 25-year-old woman he had never met but already felt tied to. He replayed her last message, the one she sent hours before his flight. "Can't wait to finally hold you." The words had carved straight through his chest, soft and dangerous. He clung to them, letting them drown out the nervousness tightening his ribs. For 6 months she had been his lifeline, laughing at his jokes, calling him "my gentleman," sharing dreams of a future far from the chaos she hinted at. She never explained the chaos and he never pressed. When someone makes you feel wanted, questions feel like stones you're afraid to throw. A flight attendant passed, offering a tired smile as she checked seatbelts. Daniel nodded politely and wiped his palms on his jeans. He felt like a teenager again, overexcited, insecure, terrified of being disappointed. Yet he'd never admitted those fears aloud. On the surface, he was calm. Inside, he was trembling. He thought about the night this journey began. He had been sitting alone with a cold cup of coffee when her first message arrived. "You look kind." No one had called him that in years. One message became 20, then hundreds. Late-night confessions, playful teasing, emotional vulnerability he thought he'd forgotten how to share. She became the light he reached for every morning. But even lights cast shadows. Amara never video called. She always had an excuse: bad Wi-Fi, dying battery, not feeling pretty, too dark in her room. Daniel convinced himself the excuses were normal. He wanted to believe them. Belief, after all, is easier than loneliness. And yet, on certain nights, with the glow of her messages reflecting on his tired face, something inside him whispered, "What if you're being fooled?" He ignored it every time. The plane jerked softly as it began its descent toward Kingston. Daniel's heart thudded harder. He imagined Amara waiting at the airport, maybe in a yellow dress like the one she once described. He wondered how she smelled, how her smile would look in real sunlight. He wondered, too, why her last voice note had sounded shaky, almost frightened. "There's something I need to tell you tomorrow," she had whispered. "Something important." He tried to ask what she meant, but she went offline. The seatbelt sign chimed. Daniel straightened, feeling sweat gather at the base of his neck. He told himself he was overthinking. People get emotional when big moments arrive. Maybe that was all. When the wheels touched the runway, a jolt ran through him, not of excitement, but of something colder, thinner, uncertain. Yet he forced a smile. He had crossed an ocean for her. He would not let fear rewrite his story now. As he stepped into the humid Jamaican air, suitcase in hand, Daniel felt the world tilt slightly, not from the heat, but from a sensation he couldn't yet name. The airport buzzed with life, laughter, motion. But not with Amara. She wasn't there. And in the hollow of that absence, something dark quietly awakened. He checked his phone again, forcing slow breaths, telling himself she was simply delayed. But as minutes stretched and the crowd thinned, unease tightened in his gut, whispering this was only the beginning now. Daniel waited near the airport exit long after most passengers had disappeared into the humid Jamaican night. His suitcase leaned against his leg, fingers tapping restlessly on the handle while his eyes swept the crowd for any hint of a young woman with familiar features. Nothing. No yellow dress. No shy smile. No sign of Amara at all. The silence around him felt heavier with each passing minute. Finally, he opened his phone and checked their last conversation. The voice note glowed at him like an unopened letter he wasn't sure he wanted to read again. "Something I need to tell you tomorrow," she had whispered. "Please don't be upset." He replayed it, trying to detect any hint of deception, but all he heard was breathlessness, maybe fear. Or maybe he only imagined it because imagination was safer than truth. With no rideshare available, he took a taxi to his hotel. The drive felt unreal, bright shops, distant music, palm trees swaying in the warm breeze. but his mind stayed trapped in the silence Amara had left him with. The driver kept glancing at him in the mirror, perhaps sensing the tension rolling off him. "First time in Jamaica?" the man asked. Daniel nodded. "First time meeting someone," he added before he could stop himself. "Be careful," the driver said, not unkindly. "People ain't always who they say online." The comment struck deeper than Daniel expected. He forced a smile. "She's real." "Hope so, man," the driver replied. At the hotel, Daniel checked in and dropped his suitcase onto the bed. The room was small, clean, with a faint ocean scent drifting through the cracked window. He sank into a chair and opened the message thread with Amara again. Scrolling back through months of texts felt like peeling the skin from a wound he wasn't ready to expose. He remembered the first red flag, the way she never video called. Not once. They'd tried 7 times, and every attempt ended in an excuse. "Ugh, my camera is acting up. It's too dark in my room. I look ugly today. Next time, I promise." He'd ignored all of it, choosing the comfort of her words over the cold clarity of doubt. Now those excuses circled him like ghosts. He clicked on her photos again, always cropped at the shoulders, always hiding the edges of her life. Always careful. He whispered to himself, "Why didn't I ask harder questions?" Because questions could break fantasy. And fantasy was all he had some nights. He sent her a message. "I'm here. At the hotel. Everything okay?" Then another. "You're not at the airport. Something happen?" Both messages sat unread. A knot formed in his stomach. He tried to distract himself by unpacking, but every folded shirt and neatly placed item felt like a reminder that he had committed fully to this journey. Emotionally, financially, blindly. He sat on the bed and let his head tilt back against the wall, breathing slowly. His phone buzzed. Not with a message. With a notification. Amara is online. Daniel's heart jumped. He watched the typing indicator appear, disappear, reappear, then vanish completely. Minutes dragged. No message came. He typed quickly. "Talk to me. I'm worried." This time, she responded. "Amara, Daniel? I'm sorry. I didn't come. I couldn't." "Daniel, why? What's going on?" "Amara, I want to explain. Tomorrow. Please just rest tonight." "Daniel, you scared me. Are you okay?" "Amara, no. Not really. I'll tell you everything when I see you." He hesitated before typing. "Promise." A long pause. "Amara, yes. Tomorrow morning. The cafe near the harbor. 10 a.m. That was all." She went offline again. Daniel stared at the screen. Her message soothed nothing. Instead, it sharpened every suspicion he had tried to bury. If she couldn't face him at the airport, what was she hiding behind all those soft words and excuses? He lay back on the bed, staring at the dim ceiling, knowing sleep wouldn't come. Not with so many unanswered questions. And not with the uneasy feeling that tomorrow's meeting would change everything, for better or worse. As the night wrapped around him, Daniel whispered into the darkness, "Just let her be real." Tomorrow would give him the truth, one he wasn't prepared for. Daniel arrived at the Harbor Cafe 20 minutes early, nerves chewing at him with every step. The ocean wind carried a soft morning chill, brushing against the wooden tables and rattling the metal signs that hung above the entrance. He sat where he could see both the door and the water, his instinct already scanning for danger even though he told himself he was being dramatic. Still, after last night's messages, nothing felt simple anymore. He wrapped his fingers around a cup of black coffee he didn't remember ordering. The steam rose between him and the world, giving everything a blurred, dreamlike quality. From the corner of his eye, he watched couples laughing, families taking photos, locals greeting each other warmly. Everyone seemed grounded in reality, except him. Then he saw her. Amara approached hesitantly from the far side of the harbor, head down, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her clothes were baggy, far from the bright, flirty outfits she always described. When she looked up briefly, Daniel felt a shock jolt through him. She was undeniably beautiful, but not in the polished, filtered way her photos portrayed. Her eyes held exhaustion. a kind of bruised softness he couldn't immediately place. She stopped a few feet from him. "Daniel?" Her voice was the same. Warm, delicate, shaken. The real version of the voice notes he'd replayed late into lonely nights. He stood, unsure whether to reach for her. "Amara, you didn't show up yesterday." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I panicked." Her gaze darted around the cafe as though expecting someone to appear, someone she didn't want to see. Daniel motioned for her to sit. Her hands trembled as she took a seat across from him, keeping her shoulders hunched, her jacket zipped tight. "Why didn't you video call me all this time?" he asked gently. A flash of pain crossed her face. "I told you. I wasn't ready." "That's not an answer." She swallowed hard, the muscles in her throat quivering. "I needed time. To tell you this. To show you this." Slowly, with shaky fingers, she reached for her zipper. Daniel felt the atmosphere thicken. The world around them seemed to fall into a hush as she slid the zipper down, revealing a faded tank top beneath. She hesitated, closing her eyes. Then she pulled the fabric aside. Daniel's breath left him in a crushed exhale. Amara's chest was flat, completely. Not small, not underdeveloped. Flat, with two long, uneven scars stretching across her skin. Deep, jagged, imperfect. He felt the shock like a blow, not from disgust but from the brutal reality of what those scars meant. Amara kept her eyes closed, as though bracing for impact. Daniel forced his voice to be steady. What happened to you?" She swallowed again, tears pooling. "I had to survive something I never wanted to tell you. Something no one should ever live through." He leaned forward. "Amara, look at me." Slowly, she lifted her gaze. "I didn't lie to hurt you," she whispered. "I lied because I didn't know if you'd stay after seeing me like this." "Why wouldn't I stay?" Daniel asked, but doubt clawed at him even as he said it. "Because men don't stay for broken things," she said. "And I am broken in ways you don't understand." Her voice cracked. Daniel reached across the table, but she flinched, pulling her arms close again. "There's more you need to know," she said quietly. "About how this happened, and about who might be watching me now." A cold pulse ran through Daniel's veins. "Who?" he asked. Amara's eyes shifted toward the alley beside the cafe, a short, tense glance packed with unspoken fear. "Not here," she whispered. "Please, come with me. I'll explain everything. But not in the open." Daniel looked in the direction she'd glanced. No one was there. Not yet. With a pounding heart, he stood, knowing that whatever truth she carried, it would lead them somewhere darker than he'd imagined. Daniel followed Amara through the narrow harbor streets, unable to shake the unsettling feeling that someone might be trailing them. Every few steps she glanced over her shoulder, flinching at shadows that didn't move, pausing whenever distant voices echoed too loudly. The morning sun was bright, but around her, everything felt dimmed by fear. "Amara," Daniel whispered as they reached a quieter alley, "are you sure we shouldn't talk here? Just for a minute." She shook her head sharply. "No, not outside." Her voice carried the tremble of someone who had been startled too many times. "Please, just trust me." He said nothing after that. The desperation in her tone was enough to push aside his confusion. She led him past a row of shuttered shops, down a sloping path, and into a neighborhood where the pavement cracked beneath their feet. The air grew heavier, tasting faintly of smoke and salt water. When they finally stopped outside a faded, two-story house with peeling yellow paint, Daniel hesitated. "You live here?" She nodded, hugging herself tightly. "It's not much, but it's safe, most days." Most days. The words clung to him like humidity. Inside, the house was dimly lit. The curtains were drawn as though blocking out more than just sunlight. A small fan hummed weakly in the corner, stirring warm air rather than cooling it. Daniel noticed two mugs on the table, an ashtray filled with cigarette butts, and an overturned picture frame lying face down. Nothing felt accidental. Amara closed the door quickly behind them and leaned against it, exhaling shakily. "I didn't want to bring you here," she said. "But I need you to understand pieces of my life before I tell you everything." Daniel took a slow step toward her. "I'm not going anywhere." She attempted a smile, but it faltered before reaching her eyes. You say that now. He waited, giving her space to find her words. She moved to the small sofa and sat, drawing her knees close. Daniel joined her cautiously, leaving a respectful distance between them. For years, she began quietly, I've been trying to rebuild myself. Some days I feel like I'm getting closer. Other days, she gestured vaguely at her chest, her scars hidden but undeniably present. Other days, everything feels raw again. Daniel listened, sensing how much this cost her. I didn't want you to see me like that, she whispered. Not the scars. Not the fear. Not the pieces I've been trying to hide. I'm here because I wanted to know you, he said softly. The real you. She let out a sad laugh. The real me is complicated. Then let me understand. She hesitated before speaking again. The man who did this to me, he wasn't a stranger. He was someone I loved. Someone who said he loved me. I trusted him with everything. And when he felt like he was losing control of me, her voice cracked. He took what he thought would make me less desirable to anyone else. Daniel's stomach twisted. Amara. Don't, she said quickly, shaking her head. I don't want pity. I want safety. And I haven't had that in a long time. He reached out but stopped short, unsure whether touch would comfort or startle her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I wanted to, she said. But I didn't know how. And because he's still around. Daniel froze. Still around? She nodded. He never really left. He told me once that even if I ran across the ocean, he'd find me. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. Some nights, I think he already has. Daniel followed her gaze. What do you mean? There's someone staying here, she whispered. Someone you didn't see when we walked in. Daniel's pulse thumped in his ears. Who? Amara pressed her fingers against her trembling lips. You'll meet him soon, whether I want that or not. A soft creak echoed from the back of the house. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Amara's face went pale. Daniel, he's awake. Daniel turned toward the sound, heart tightening as the footsteps grew closer. Whoever was in the house was coming. And the missing piece of Amara's story was about to step into the dim light. Daniel stood as the slow footsteps entered the living room, each thud hitting the wooden floor like a warning. Amara rose beside him, trembling so visibly that Daniel instinctively placed a steadying hand near her, not touching, just close enough to let her know he was there. The dim hallway gradually revealed a tall figure stepping into view. The man looked older than he probably was, mid-30s maybe, but his face carried a lifetime of violence. A jagged scar cut across his right cheek and traveled down to the edge of his mouth, pulling the corner into a permanent half-snarl. His eyes, cold and unblinking, fixed on Daniel the way a predator studies something trespassing in its territory. Amara's voice was barely audible. Daniel, this is Rohan. Rohan didn't acknowledge her. So, he said, his accent thick, his tone edged with disdain, this the man you dragged all the way here? Daniel forced himself to stand straight. I came because Amara asked me to. Rohan chuckled, a low, bitter sound. Amara asks for many things. Doesn't mean she gets them. Daniel felt Amara flinch. The reaction wasn't small. It was instinctive, conditioned, the kind formed after years of fear. Rohan noticed and smiled, satisfied. Why are you here? Daniel asked, careful to keep his voice steady. Rohan stepped closer, the room shrinking with each pace. Why am I here? He looked at Amara with a mocking tilt of his head. Tell him. She shook her head quickly. Please, not now. But Rohan ignored her. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, as though settling into a familiar performance. This girl, he said, locking eyes with Daniel, owes me. Owes me time, money, loyalty, everything. He tapped the scar on his cheek. And I owe her nothing but truth. Daniel fought back the urge to step in front of Amara. She doesn't belong to you. Rohan arched a brow. You sure about that? Because I was here long before you were, old man. Amara's breath hitched. Rohan, stop. He pushed off the wall and stalked toward her. You brought him into my house? Into my business? After everything I've done to protect you? Daniel stepped between them before he could think. Don't talk to her like that. Rohan stopped inches away from him, eyes narrowing. You got backbone. I'll give you that. His voice dipped darker. But you don't know anything. Not about her. Not about what she's done. Amara shook her head quickly. He's lying. Rohan smirked. Tell him then. Tell him how you ran. Tell him why you're hiding. Tell him what you stole. Enough. Amara's voice cracked, loud enough to startle both men. Tears streaked her face. You don't get to twist things anymore. For a moment, something unreadable flickered in Rohan's eyes. Then he laughed again, quieter this time, almost amused. Twist? Sweetheart, I don't need to twist anything. The truth already hurts enough. Daniel's fists clenched. If you want to fight, take it outside. Not here. Rohan tilted his head as if considering the offer, then waved a dismissive hand. Relax. I'm not touching her. Not today. He moved toward the back room but paused in the doorway. But remember something, Daniel Mercer. You don't know who you're saving. He pointed at Amara without looking at her. And she doesn't know what danger she's dragging you into. With that, he disappeared into the shadows of the hallway, leaving the air thick with everything unsaid. Amara collapsed onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. Daniel knelt beside her. Amara, what did he mean? Her voice shook as she whispered, there are things I didn't tell you. Things I'm scared to even say out loud. Daniel swallowed hard. Then tell me now. She looked up, eyes red, breath unsteady. Before I do, you need to understand what Rohan really wants from me. Outside, a dog barked. Inside, the wall seemed to close in. And Daniel sensed the next truth would be far worse than the last. The hallway felt colder than before, as if the entire house had absorbed the tension between Aiden and Maya. Chapter 5 had ended with Maya stepping back from the scarred stranger, heart pounding, realizing that his warning wasn't a threat, it was a plea. Now, as the door clicked shut behind her, she felt the weight of secrets tightening around her like invisible chains. Aiden stood in the living room, arms folded, pretending he hadn't been listening. But Maya saw the storm in his eyes. What did he tell you? He asked, voice strangely calm, a calmness that scared her more than anger would have. She swallowed. Nothing important. Just that he shouldn't have knocked. Aiden's gaze sharpened. And you believed him? Maya forced a shaky smile. It doesn't matter. Let's just forget it. But Aiden didn't move. You're hiding something. It wasn't an accusation. It was a certainty. Maya stepped past him toward the couch, trying to breathe normally, trying not to replay the stranger's whisper. He isn't who he says he is. You need to leave before it's too late. She needed time. Time to understand who the scarred man was. Time to figure out why Aiden reacted with fear, not anger, when he saw him. Time to uncover the truth behind the locked basement door that Aiden claimed was just storage. Aiden followed her with silent steps. We promised honesty, he said softly. You remember that, right? She nodded, though her pulse spiked. He had said the same words the night he confessed he'd been married before, and that his ex-wife had disappeared. Now the word promise felt like a rope tightening. Aiden sat beside her. Maya, do you trust me? She looked at his hands. They were trembling. Oddly human. Oddly vulnerable. Yes, she said. A lie. A necessary one. He exhaled in relief. Then he leaned forward and lowered his voice. Good. Because I don't want you talking to strangers around here. Not everyone has good intentions. She felt a chill. He said he knew you. Aiden's jaw clenched. I know a lot of people. But he said, I don't care what he said. Aiden's voice cracked like a whip. Silence swallowed the room. He stood abruptly and paced toward the hallway. Just stay away from him, he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. People like him, they twist things. Maya watched him disappear around the corner. She waited until footsteps faded before rising. She walked slowly toward the basement door. Her fingers hovered over the knob. It was always locked. Boys. Aiden insisted it was for safety. Old wiring, he'd said. Wouldn't want you to get hurt. But Maya had lived enough life to recognize a lie spoken too quickly. She pressed her ear against the wood. Nothing. No movement, no hum, no sign of anything unusual, yet her instincts screamed that the answers she needed were behind that door. A sudden click echoed from down the hall. She jerked back as Aiden reappeared, holding 2 cups of tea. His smile was too bright, too forced. "Thought you might need something warm," he said. Her hand shook as she accepted the cup. "Thanks." He glanced at the basement door behind her. "Why are you standing there?" "I wasn't." "Maya." His voice hardened again. "I told you. It's dangerous." "I know." She forced a laugh. "I was just exploring." He stared for a long moment before brushing past her and trying the doorknob himself, as though checking it was still locked. Then he inserted a key, turned it, and pocketed the key again. She noticed something she hadn't before. His hand shook when he locked it. Aiden returned to the living room, but she remained frozen in the hallway, mind racing. The scarred man's warning. Aiden's fear. The trembling hands. The locked door that he protected like a secret worth killing for. She realized something chilling. Aiden wasn't worried she'd get hurt in the basement. He was worried she'd find something. And for the first time since she met him, Maya understood she might not be in love, she might be in danger. Still clutching the tea, she stepped back, steadying her breath, preparing herself for the chapter of truth that waited in the dark below. The taste of the tea still lingered on Maya's tongue as she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day repeated in an endless loop: Aiden's trembling hands, the scarred man's warning, the key disappearing into Aiden's pocket. Chapter 6 had closed with her realizing she might not be safe, and now the darkness in the room felt heavier, as though the walls themselves were listening. Aiden's soft breathing came from the other side of the bed. Too soft. Too controlled. She wondered if he was awake, pretending to sleep as she was. The thought made her heart pound harder. She needed answers. And the only place left to look was in the shadows he tried to hide. Slowly, carefully, she turned her head toward the nightstand on his side of the bed. Aiden always left his phone charging there, screen face down. But tonight, it wasn't the phone she was interested in, it was the drawer beneath it. Because earlier, when he bent down to lock the basement, she'd heard a faint clatter, metal against wood. Something small. Something secret. She counted to 10, then eased herself out of bed, feet brushing the cold floor. Aiden didn't move. She held her breath, then tiptoed around the bed and eased the nightstand drawer open. Inside, beneath a folded napkin and a loose charger cord, lay a second phone. But unlabeled. No case. No fingerprints. Completely clean, unnaturally clean. Maya's pulse hammered. Aiden had never mentioned owning another phone. And the look on his face earlier, fear, not anger, told her everything. Whatever was stored in this phone, he didn't want her to see it. She picked it up carefully. It felt cold, as if it hadn't been touched in days, maybe weeks. She pressed the side button. A lock screen appeared. No notifications. Just a password field. She stared at it. 4 digits. It could be anything. A soft shift sounded from the bed. Aiden turned over, muttering in his sleep. Maya froze, breath caught in her throat. When he settled again, she exhaled slowly. Her mind raced. What was the one number he trusted more than anything? What sequence carried meaning for him? She tried his birthday. Wrong. Her birthday. Wrong. Then she remembered his trembling hand on the basement lock. The key he guarded. The number engraved on the key tag that she'd glimpsed for half a second. 2073. She typed it. The screen unlocked. Her stomach dropped. Dozens of messages filled the screen, each more chilling than the last. Conversations with people she didn't know. A folder labeled her. Another named Basement. And a third titled Final. Her thumb hovered over her folder. She opened it. Photos appeared, blurry, nighttime shots of her. Following her. Watching her long before they ever met in person. Images from outside her apartment, her workplace, even the grocery store she always visited on Thursdays. Her breath hitched. Her legs threatened to give out. Aiden had been stalking her. She opened the basement folder next, expecting something horrific. But instead she saw documents, scanned papers, hospital files, a blurry ID card with Aiden's younger face and a woman beside him. The same woman he claimed had disappeared. Except she wasn't listed as missing. She was listed as deceased. Maya's throat tightened. Aiden had lied about everything. A sudden vibration made her jump. The hidden phone buzzed in her hand, an incoming message from an unknown number. Did she find out yet? Her blood ran cold. The bedroom behind her creaked. She whipped around. Aiden sat up in the bed, staring at her in the dim light, his expression unreadable. "Maya," he said softly, voice trembling, not with fear, but with something darker. "Put the phone down." Her fingers froze around the device. He stood slowly, the shadows stretching across his face, swallowing every lie he had ever told. "You weren't supposed to see that," he whispered. "Not yet." Maya took a step back, the phone clutched to her chest. He took a step forward. Between them stretched the truth she wasn't meant to uncover, and the danger that would define whatever came next. For a moment, Maya couldn't move. Aiden's silhouette filled the space between her and the only exit, the dim lamp behind him outlining his frame like a warning. Chapter 7 had ended with his quiet, chilling command, "Put the phone down." Now the room seemed to shrink around her, the air too heavy to breathe. She forced her grip to loosen, letting the hidden phone remain at her side instead of dropping it. Aiden stepped forward. His expression was calm, too calm, but something trembled underneath, the same fraying instability she had sensed from the first night. "Maya," he said, lowering his voice like he was soothing a frightened animal, "you're misunderstanding everything." Her heart thudded. "You stalked me," she whispered. "That's not what I did." His jaw tightened. "I protected you. You have no idea what kind of danger you walked into when you met me." She took a step back. "You lied about your wife. You lied about this trip. You lied about—" She wasn't supposed to die. The words slipped out of him, quiet but sharp. But she wouldn't listen. She wouldn't stay. Maya's breath hitched. That was all she needed to hear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't emotional dysfunction. This was a man who had rewritten reality in his own mind. A man who could hurt her. She didn't wait for him to reach her. With her free hand, she grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and swung it. The cord jerked and the bulb smashed into the floor instead of him, but the sudden movement startled him just enough. Maya bolted toward the door. Aiden lunged, fingers grazing her arm, but she slipped away, adrenaline tearing through her veins. She sprinted into the hallway, bare feet silent against the cool tiles. Behind her, Aiden shouted her name, angry now, no longer gentle. The house was dark, unfamiliar, a maze of shadows and corners. She raced down the narrow corridor toward the living room, the hidden phone still in her hand, the only evidence she had of the truth. A door slammed somewhere behind her. He was coming. She reached the front door and twisted the lock, but the metal jammed. Panic flared. She tried again. Nothing. Aiden must have sealed it earlier, just like he had locked the basement. She was trapped inside his world by design. Her mind raced. World by design. Her mind raced. There had to be another way out. The kitchen window. She dashed toward it, pushing past the dining table. Small, smudged glass panes looked out into the faint pre-dawn light. She unlatched one, shoved it upward, wincing as it creaked loudly. The gap was narrow, but she was desperate. She squeezed her arms through first, then her head, pushing her shoulders until pain shot through her. Behind her, she heard footsteps pounding down the hall. "Maya, stop!" Aiden shouted. "You're hurting yourself." She didn't stop. She shoved harder and tumbled out, landing on the damp grass outside. The early morning air hit her like cold water. She pushed herself up, breath shaking, and ran. The yard stretched wide, the fence line barely visible. She sprinted toward it, her legs burning, her lungs begging for air. Behind her, the kitchen window crashed open. Aiden climbed out. "Maya!" His voice was raw. "Come back. You don't understand what they'll do." She didn't look back. She reached the fence and scrambled over it, scraping her palms on the splintered wood. On the other side lay the gravel road, empty and quiet. Dawn was just beginning to bleed into the horizon, a thin ribbon of pale gold. Maya ran toward it. Toward the light. Toward anything that wasn't him. She didn't stop until the house disappeared behind the trees, swallowed by distance and shadow. And as she reached the road that led away from everything she thought she knew, she clutched the hidden phone against her chest. Not realizing it held one more secret she hadn't opened yet. The gravel road beneath Maya's feet gave way to soft sand as she reached the edge of the shoreline. Dawn had barely arrived, just faint streaks of pale orange stretched across the horizon, but the vast emptiness of the coast felt like a sanctuary after the suffocating darkness of Aiden's house. Chapter 8 had ended with her running toward the road, desperate for escape. Now she found herself staring at the ocean, waves swallowing the secrets of the night. Her breaths came in sharp, broken bursts. Her entire body trembled. She kept glancing back toward the trees, expecting Aiden to burst through at any moment. But the forest behind her remained still, quiet, deceptively peaceful. Maya clutched the hidden phone in her shaking hands. She hadn't yet dared open the last folder, the one titled Final. The one that felt heavier than the rest, as if it carried the true reason Aiden had lured her here. She needed help first. She stumbled along the coastline, feet sinking in wet sand, searching for any sign of people, fishermen, early swimmers, anyone. But the beach stretched empty for miles. Only the rhythmic crash of waves kept her company. Her legs weakened, and she collapsed onto the sand. Tears threatened, but she forced them back. Crying wouldn't save her. She unlocked the hidden phone. The screen glowed cold in the morning light. She hesitated, then tapped the folder labeled Final. Inside were 3 files. A video, a voice recording, and a single text document named Plan. Her stomach twisted. She opened the video first. It was shaky, filmed in a dim basement. Aiden stood behind the camera. In front of him sat a young woman, thin, trembling, her wrists tied loosely with rope. Her eyes were wide with fear. Maya's breath faltered. The woman whispered, "Please, believe. I won't say anything." Aiden's voice replied, soft, almost gentle. "You already said too much." The video cut abruptly, the screen going black. Maya slammed a hand over her mouth, fighting the rise of nausea. This wasn't proof of stalking. This was proof of something much worse. She opened the voice recording next. Aiden's voice filled the air around her, calm and emotionless. Maya arrives on the 14th. She fits the description. She won't ask questions. When it's done, the cycle ends. No more mistakes. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Fits the description? Cycle ends? What cycle? She opened the final file. Plan contained only one sentence. Deliver her before sunrise. The world tilted. Maya dropped the phone into the sand, recoiling as though it had burned her. Deliver her? To who? Behind her, a branch snapped. She froze. Slowly she turned. Aiden stood at the tree line, barefoot, shirt rumpled, hair disheveled from the chase. Blood streaked down his arm, fresh, bright against his skin. He tilted his head, eyes fixed on her with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Maya," he said softly, voice breaking. "I didn't want it to be like this." Her pulse roared in her ears. "Stay back." He stepped onto the sand, each movement slow, deliberate. "Those files, they're out of context. You weren't supposed to see them." She backed away, feet sinking deeper into the wet shoreline. "You filmed a woman begging for her life." Aiden's jaw clenched. She was lying. She tried to ruin everything. I was trying to help her, but she wouldn't listen. Just like you. He took another step. Maya searched the beach for anything, stones, driftwood, anything that could defend her. Her fingers closed around a jagged piece of coral. She held it tight. "You don't have to run," he whispered. "I can protect you. I always protect the ones I choose." "The ones you choose?" she echoed, horrified. Aiden's expression softened with twisted affection. "You were perfect. You didn't fight. You trusted. You were supposed to make it easy." She shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Aiden's entire face shifted, pain, then anger, then something feral. You don't get to decide, he growled. He lunged. Maya swung the coral. It slashed across his forearm, ripping skin. Aiden stumbled, blood spraying across the sand. He cursed, clutching his arm, but he didn't stop. The dawn sun rose higher, casting long shadows as the chase resumed, footprints digging deep into the sand, one set desperate to survive, the other determined to reclaim control. And just beyond the curve of the coastline, unseen by either of them, stood the place where everything would finally unravel. Maya's legs burned as she sprinted across the sand, each step sinking into the damp morning tide. Chapter 9 had ended with Aiden lunging at her, blood streaked across his arm, and now her lungs felt as if they might collapse under the weight of fear. Behind her, the sound of his labored breathing followed like a shadow, relentless and close. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Survival depended on distance, speed, and courage she wasn't sure she had left. The beach stretched endlessly ahead, waves curling and breaking with a soothing yet merciless rhythm. Each step brought her closer to freedom, yet the knowledge of what lay waiting at the edge of the shore gnawed at her. Help wouldn't be immediate, and even if it came, there was no guarantee it would be enough. Aiden's warning had been clear. The cycle ends only when I say so. And now, she was the cycle. Her fingers clenched the hidden phone, its weight grounding her. The final folder, the final files, had revealed the true horror of Aiden's world. A woman held captive, a plan for delivery, and his voice promising control. The evidence was absolute, undeniable, yet the visceral fear gnawed at her more than the proof. This man was dangerous, not just unstable, but capable of rationalized cruelty. And somehow, she had to escape, alone, with no one to call, no safety nets. Maya veered toward a narrow strip of dunes at the edge of the beach, the sand shifting underfoot, slowing her progress. The coral she had used to slash his arm was still clenched in her hand, a primitive weapon against an adversary who could outmatch her physically. But she had learned something vital in the past hours. Survival didn't always come from strength. It came from calculation, timing, and unpredictability. She stopped behind a cluster of tall dune grass, pressing herself low and listening. The wind carried a low groan from Aiden. He had slowed, clutching his forearm. The blood she'd drawn had cost him but also enraged him. That mixture of pain and anger could be fatal, or an opportunity. Her mind raced. He hadn't anticipated her refusal to comply. He hadn't anticipated her instinct to run. And that gap, however brief, was the margin of freedom she could seize. Taking shallow, controlled breaths, she weighed her next move. The forest beyond the dunes promised concealment, a path toward the road she had glimpsed at dawn. But the sand had left her exposed, and she couldn't risk sprinting blindly. She had to wait for a distraction, a shift, something to tip the scales. Every second was a gamble, every heartbeat a countdown. A sudden squawk from a gull drew her attention upward. Aiden's eyes followed the sound, narrowing. He cursed under his breath, stumbling over the sand. Maya recognized the moment, hesitation, the brief falter of control, and she exploited it. She surged forward, legs pumping, coral clutched tight but ready to drop if needed. His gaze snapped back, furious, but she had already gained distance, the dunes offering partial cover. Her lungs burned, every muscle screaming, yet adrenaline sharpened her awareness. She spotted the tree line she had reached before, the jagged edge of the forest promising shadow and concealment. If she could reach it, she could vanish into the thickets, outsmarting him for the first time since their meeting. Freedom was within reach, but she understood it wouldn't be without cost. The cost of survival, the cost of outsmarting a man who had built a cage around her life, might leave scars deeper than any physical wound. Behind her, Aiden's roar shattered the morning calm, a mix of fury and fear. Maya's chest heaved. She didn't glance back. Every step was deliberate, every movement precise. She was no longer the woman he had planned to control. She was something else now, something stronger, sharpened by terror, guided by instinct. The edge of the forest drew near. She could feel the cooler shade on her skin, smell the earthy scent of trees and roots. Just a few more steps, she told herself. A few more steps and she would be free. Freedom demanded courage, cunning, and sacrifice. And Maya was willing to pay it. The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and anxiety. Maya sat at the defense table, hands folded tightly in her lap, the hidden phone tucked safely in her bag. Chapter 10 had ended with her running into the forest, clawing her way toward freedom, and now, months later, she found herself facing the inevitable reckoning. Aiden sat across the room, restrained and silent, eyes flicking toward her like a hawk measuring prey. Time had not softened the intensity in his gaze. If anything, it had sharpened it. The judge entered, robes flowing, gavel in hand, and the room fell into near silence. Maya's stomach twisted, each beat a drum of anticipation and dread. Today wasn't just about justice, it was about survival. Every choice she had made, every step she had taken to escape, would be dissected under the cold scrutiny of law. Her lawyer leaned over, whispering, "Stay calm. Present facts. Stick to what you know." Maya nodded, but her mind raced. Facts were not simple when the man across from her had meticulously constructed a life of deception. He had hidden cameras, hidden messages, hidden plans, and the hidden phone had become her most vital evidence. Without it, she would be nothing but a scared girl facing a manipulator who could charm, intimidate, and twist the truth. The prosecution began, painting Aiden as a brilliant, controlled man whose outward calm masked obsessive behavior. They laid out photographs, files, and witness statements, each designed to frame the narrative of a man who stalked, trapped, and attempted to dominate Maya. Maya listened carefully, heart hammering, noting the subtle ways the truth was being sculpted. She could see the courtroom bending the story into neat lines, but real life had been messier, darker, and morally tangled. Then it was her turn. Maya stood, hands still trembling, and recounted the ordeal in her own words. Every escape, every moment of fear, every detail of the hidden phone and the folders it contained came out in measured tones. "I was terrified," she said softly, eyes scanning the gallery. "Not just for myself, but for others he had threatened before me. I had to escape. I had to survive." The gallery shifted uncomfortably. Some faces showed sympathy. Others, Aiden's gaze did not waver. He sat like a statue, lips pressed thin, watching her, calculating her every movement. Her lawyer presented the hidden phone as evidence, playing the video, the voice recordings, the documents from the final folder. The images of the captive woman, the instructions for delivery, the meticulous plan, all laid bare. Murmurs ran through the courtroom, but Maya's eyes never left Aiden. He finally spoke, voice cold, almost clinical. "You are presenting pieces of a life you cannot comprehend. I never intended her harm. She misinterpreted every action. This is manipulation of perception, not truth." Maya's pulse quickened. Every lie he had ever whispered to her, every explanation that had twisted reality, now faced the harsh scrutiny of law. The judge's gavel struck, demanding silence. Witnesses were called, experts in digital evidence verified the hidden phone's contents, and the jury absorbed each detail. Hours stretched into tense minutes, minutes into agonizing stretches where Maya could hear nothing but her own heartbeat. By the time closing arguments began, the room felt smaller, suffocating. Maya sat, drained but resolute. She had survived the escape. She had survived the chase. And now she would survive this trial. Her lawyer leaned over once more. "Whatever happens, you told the truth. That is what matters." Maya nodded, knowing that the truth had already cost her everything: safety, peace, even a semblance of trust. Yet in that moment, she understood that telling it was the only way to reclaim some measure of freedom. Across the room, Aiden's hands trembled slightly as he listened to the evidence he could no longer control. Maya's voice, steady now, had dismantled the carefully constructed illusion of power he had built. The jury retired to deliberate, and the courtroom waited in suspended silence, the weight of the coming decision pressing down on every soul present. Maya gripped her bag, feeling the hidden phone against her side like a talisman. One trial, 2 lives, and a single truth ready to be unveiled. The verdict would change everything. And the story, finally, was about to reach its end. The courtroom had emptied, leaving only the echo of gavel strikes and murmured words bouncing off the polished wood. Maya stood outside, the sun finally spilling warmth over the city after weeks of relentless rain and tension. Chapter 11 had ended with the jury retiring to deliberate, and now she felt the fragile weight of relief pressing against her chest. The verdict had been unanimous: guilty. Aiden would face the consequences for the life he had tried to control, the lies he had spun, and the fear he had inflicted. Justice had been served, but Maya understood that freedom, once earned, came at a cost far higher than a single trial could quantify. Her hands clutched the hidden phone, now a symbol of her survival. It had been the key, the evidence, the witness to a nightmare she never should have entered. She had stared into darkness, seen the extent of Aiden's obsession, and escaped. And yet, despite the relief, a hollow ache lingered, a reminder that what she had endured could never be undone. Maya walked through the courthouse steps slowly, each movement deliberate, absorbing the sunlight and letting it chase away the shadows that had clung to her for months. The sea of reporters and cameras waited, pens poised, microphones extended, but she ignored them, focusing on the quiet in her own mind. Every step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of herself, a body and mind long held hostage by fear. In the following weeks, Maya sought more than just legal resolution. Therapy sessions, support groups, and long walks along the shoreline became her sanctuary. Each day, she shed fragments of the terror that had once defined her life. The scars, both physical and emotional, remained, but they were no longer chains. They were reminders of her resilience, proof that she had survived when many might have faltered. Her phone buzzed one evening with a message from an unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the screen. The message was simple. You survived. Now live. No threats. No manipulation. Just a permission she had finally earned for herself. Maya smiled, a small, genuine curve of lips that had been absent for too long. She didn't need to reply. The world she had reclaimed required nothing from anyone else. Months passed, and Maya began taking steps to rebuild her life. She moved to a new apartment with large windows, letting light pour into every corner. She decorated it with plants and art that spoke to hope and renewal. She enrolled in a photography class, capturing the ordinary beauty around her, children playing in the park, fishermen hauling in their catch, the subtle patterns of sunlight on water. With each snapshot, she reclaimed ownership of her own perspective, her own narrative. She even returned to the beach where her escape had begun. The dunes and shoreline no longer intimidated her. They reminded her of the days she had chosen herself over fear. The morning waves carried a rhythmic peace, a quiet testament that life, like the tide, could be relentless yet renewing. One evening, she stood at the water's edge, feeling the surf lap at her feet. She held the hidden phone in her hand, now cleaned of all files, a blank slate. The phone had once contained horrors she could barely fathom. Now it was simply a tool, a device no longer burdened with the weight of someone else's obsessions. Maya breathed deeply, inhaling the scent of salt and freedom. Her body felt stronger, her mind clearer. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she could look forward without fear. She had endured the unimaginable and emerged with the knowledge that survival wasn't passive, it was active. It required courage, determination, and the willingness to claim one's life back piece by piece. She bent down, letting the water wash over her toes, and felt the sunlight warm her face. A tear escaped, but this one was not fear or despair. It was release. She had escaped Aiden, the shadows of his control, and the haunting knowledge of what might have been. A new body. A new beginning. A new life. Maya turned away from the ocean, her gaze fixed on the city skyline in the distance. Each step forward was unshakable, deliberate, a testament to the woman she had become, resilient, whole, and finally free. The past remained, but it no longer dictated her future. She carried the lessons, the scars, and the strength, ready to meet whatever life offered, unafraid, and fully alive. For the first time, Maya smiled without hesitation. She was no longer running. She was walking toward a future she could claim for herself, and nothing could take it away.